What's going on, guys? Welcome back to my guitar repair bench. Today we're going to answer a question that I've been asked a couple of times recently, and that is, how in the world do I change my own acoustic guitar strings? I have never done it before. I need to learn how to do it. Well, you're in luck. Today we're going to do just that. Stick around. So if you've been playing guitar for a while, that question may sound a little bit silly, but believe me, it is not silly at all. There are a lot of people that don't change their own strings for one reason or another. It could be that they just don't know how to do it, or maybe they don't like to do it, or maybe they just like taking their guitar to a shop and kind of having it gone through and a general checkup. There's nothing wrong with either one of those things, but if you want to learn how to do it yourself, you've come to the right place. My process is going to be very similar to what most repair shops will do. We're going to remove the strings, we're going to clean and recondition the fretboard as necessary, we'll polish the guitar, and we'll reinstall the new strings. This really is not a hard process because we're not going to do any sort of setup or adjustments. We're only going to clean it up and reinstall the strings. So let's jump right in and get these strings changed. So what we're going to be working on here is this Ibanez acoustic guitar. The first thing we need to do is, using our trusty string winder, remove the string tension by loosening the strings. You don't have to use a string winder. It's just a lot of times it's faster. Now, how far do you need to loosen them? Well, you want to loosen them enough so that there is no tension on the strings, because as soon as we pop these pins out of there, we don't want that string to go flying. So, floppy, floppy, they're good. Now we're going to use our string winder tool, which has a little groove in the back. We can pop out these pins. Huh. Apparently I just broke my string winder. There we go. And you can see as I'm pulling these out, these strings are not flying out of there. If there was tension on there, there's a chance that they could just go flying. Now that we've got the strings off, I can get to the fretboard really well. Now we need to recondition this one. This fretboard is not looking too bad, but it is looking a little bit dry. To recondition my fretboards, I use this lemon oil. This is from StuMac, not sponsored, but I do like this, plus it smells good. I just apply a little bit with a regular old paper towel. Now, I'm not saying a lemon oil is the only way to go. If you use a different product, that's totally fine. There's tons of them on the market. Whatever works best for you is okay to use. Once it's had a few minutes to soak in, I'll go back and wipe off any excess. There we go, that's looking good. Now it's time to break out the microfiber cloth. We're going to give this thing a quick polish. I'm using Preservation Polish. It's another StuMac product. Again, not sponsored, but I do like the way this works. Don't forget the headstock. If you're going to polish your instrument, I recommend highly using some sort of polish designed for instruments. Don't use something like a Windex or something like that. You never know what the ingredients in there could do to your guitar finish. So I always recommend using something designed for instruments. I noticed the tuners were loose on this particular guitar, so we're just going to tighten them down really quick. Now, it's possible as you're handling the guitar that the saddle could come out of the saddle slot. Now, this one fits pretty loose, but that's not really a big deal. Just make sure when you're removing your strings, you pay attention to how this saddle is in there. That way you don't have to mess around trying to figure out which way is the right way. We are now ready to get some strings back in there. So we're going to need some strings. Now if you're not sure what kind of strings you're going to need, you could always take your guitar to the music shop where they could measure the strings that are on there, and that way you get the same set. Because if you change the strings from what's originally on there, it's going to change the setup. So if your guitar is playing well and you like it the way it is, make sure you get the same size strings that are on there. You don't want it to change any of the setup. When you get your strings, they're usually wound up in this little coil. Just be careful when you're unwinding them. Don't let them poke you in the eye. First, you'll place the ball end down in the slot. Most of the time, the pegs have a slot. That slot goes toward the string, which means toward the neck. So you'll put that in and then pull your string up to make sure it's seated up against the peg. I will usually go down through and get all of my strings started first, and then I'll move down and get them loaded on the tuners. I'm going to turn this guitar around so you can see it a little better. It's important when it comes to restringing the tuners that you get them in the right spot. Now in this configuration with 3 tuners on each side, typically they're going to go starting with your high E and go up and around and ending with your low E over here. So it's kind of a horseshoe shape. So you load your string through the hole. Now this is a part that kind of takes a little bit of practice just to know how far to pull it through. Ultimately, when you're done, you want to have 3 to 4 wraps on this tuner. So you need to leave about that much. Now different size strings are going to require different space. So if you have to back it off and tighten it or give a little more slack, you may have to do that a couple times. Sometimes I even have to do that myself. So when you wrap it, you want the string to come up toward the center and around. So you're going to come up this way and around. Don't wrap it the other way. It's going to put your strings at a funny angle. You want them to come down the center and around. So this side will come down the center and around. Down and around, like this. And you want each wrap to go below the previous wrap. Be careful of these loose ends. Don't let them get you in the eye. I've almost had them poke me a few times. You just got to be aware of where they're at. So you can see how each of those is coming up and around. Kind of awkward doing this. We're trying to stay out of the way of the camera. Usually I'm not in this kind of awkward angle. As you're tightening your strings, you may notice some of these pegs will start to pop out a little bit. All you really need to do is back your string tension back off. Make sure those are pushed back down in there. It's not a big deal. Once you get string tension on there, it's going to hold them in place. Just keep an eye on them though as you're tuning it up. Perfect. So you can see that one is kind of popped out. Just going to back this tension off. Push that guy down. Tighten it back up. And it's fine. Now we're just going to tune it up to pitch. Now right now what we're trying to do is just get it up to pitch. We want to get the string stretched out. So once you get it tuned up, I like to go down through and just give the strings just a little pull. Some people do this a little bit different. Some people sell tools to do this. But I've just found that doing it by hand works just fine. You can also hold it down on one side, stretch it this way. Now I have broken strings doing this, so you don't want to really yank on it. You're not trying to fling the guitar around, but just to get those strings broken in a little bit, and then we can tune it up again. probably have to retune this a few times before these strings really get settled in. Plus, it's not always most accurate to tune it laying down on the bench. Optimally, you want to tune it while it's in the playing position. So once you get ready to play, just give it a retune and you should be good to go. The last thing I want to do, snip off these string ends. Make sure when you cut them off, you try to cut them as close as you can to the post on the tuner. Now a couple of these I got to trim back a little bit more because, well, it's kind of awkward trying to stay out of the way of the camera. But if you leave a big piece sticking out of there, most likely at some point it is going to end up poking you in the finger. Some people like to leave these long. I can't stand that. It drives me nuts. But if you like it that way, then you know what? It's yours. And you are ready to play your newly restrung guitar. So there you have it, guys. Quick and simple, nothing to this. Once you do it a couple of times, it's like a piece of cake. Don't be afraid if you want to jump in and try this yourself. You can do this. If there are other guitar repair topics that you'd like to see me cover, leave it down below in the comments. Thanks a lot for watching, everybody. We'll see you next time.